the World Bank. CDPR is the Consortium for Development Policy Research. It's a Lahore-based organization that works very closely with the International Growth Center. And among other things, it hosts webinar series on different topics of interest in economic policy. The topic today is extremely important. It's been agitating the minds of policymakers for a very long time. Agriculture is 19% of the GDP, but a large part of the of employment in the economy, plays a significant role. But as a revenue base, it has not played the role that that was expected of it. For a variety of reasons, the total tax collection remains small, even though the potential is around 70 billion rupees. If we were to collect all 70 billion rupees, it could constitute a large part of our expenditures. For example, Punjab alone this year is going to be spending that amount of money on the new health insurance programs that it is introducing. So this is just an illustration of the kind of programs that could be supported by a robust agriculture income tax. There's a variety of reasons why this is happening. It has to do with the way the tax is conceptualized. It's not treated as a standard income tax. It is more in the nature of a land tax. And it's a huge question of whether we should continue to think about it as a land tax. There's a whole set of questions related to the fact that that provincial governments collect this income tax, and the kinds of administrative expertise that's needed to collect this as a proper income tax may not be there. So then the question is, how do we increase the capacity of the provinces so that they can levy this as an income tax, or something that comes close to an income tax? So there's a whole variety of reasons. Continuing to treat agriculture tax the way it is currently raises important questions of horizontal equity in taxation. But much more important, it raises the question of incomplete information, which results in people shifting incomes to agriculture and escaping other forms of income which are liable to taxes. And because information is not available and not fully shared between provinces and the federal government, many people believe that the current status of agricultural income tax results in a large tax gap. So there's a variety of issues that come up, all of them very interesting. They agitate the mind of researchers, they agitate the minds of policymakers. And we have a fantastic panel today that will attempt to address several of these questions. Let me hand it over to our resident country director for the World Bank, Mr. Naji, for his views. And then I will introduce Arifa Noor, who's very well known, Arifa Noor, who will be hosting the event for us today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ijaz. I will be very quick because I want us to go in the heart of the discussion. I'd like to thank everyone for joining today. Very happy that we're having this second seminar on the tax topic and with the CDPR, and we'll continue. First focused on income tax and now agricultural tax. So very much looking forward to discussion, to learn from it. I won't add anything to the context that Ijaz mentioned. And let me hand it over to Mrs. Arifa Noor for the moderation. Let's get into the discussion directly. Thank you.
Okay, fantastic. Just a quick word on Arifa. Arifa is a host, is a television host. We all watch her daily program, almost daily program on television. She was a resident editor for the Dawn in Islamabad. And I know her from nearly 20 years ago as a young sub-editor at Friday Times when I was writing a weekly column. So Arifa comes with a rich tradition of journalism in Pakistan, and we are delighted that she's agreed to host today's discussion. Over to you, Arifa.
Thank you, Ijaz. That was, I think, far more generous than it should have been. I thank you for allowing me to moderate this session. I hope I can do justice to it, because, of course, journalists like us are used to the more, generalized discussion. Obviously you guys are talking more about it in terms of tax, but I would like to add that, as a journalist who's at least trying to grapple with some of the issues of the economy in recent years, I think agriculture tax especially is an issue that that doesn't really find much space in public discourse in Pakistan. We talk about taxing the traders, or we talk about widening the tax net, but never in terms of agriculture, cultural income. So I hope that this seminar will also, kickstart the larger debate in some ways. Now, without further ado,
just give me 5 seconds. This is responding to some of the suggestions that came from people who attended previous webinars. They want the discussion to be bilingual. So we'll do Urdish.
Oh, that sounds
so that's
great.
one. The other issue that has been raised is that we should try to have more women on the panel. So your presence today should make up for it. But this is a serious issue. And I'm very glad to report that when I look at some of the younger cohort that's coming into the economic profession, it is now increasingly dominated by women. So I expect within the next 5 years, we'll have fantastic panels consisting primarily of women analysts and women policymakers in the arena of economic policy. Over to you.
Thank you. That sounds great. But for the moment today, I think I'm representing the sort of not just doing the job of the average, jisko kehte na, the sahafi, or bringing the public view there, but I'm also representing the entire gender. I didn't realize that. But anyway, to begin, I'll just introduce the panelists alphabetically, because I think that's probably the most politically correct way of doing it. We've got Mr. Amir Hayat Bhandara with us. He's a farmer and co-founder of the Agriculture Republic. Mr. Hanid Mukhtar, he's a former senior economist at the World Bank and fellow at the Consortium for Development Policy Research. Taimur Jhagra Sahab, of course, he's joined us, Provincial Minister for Finance and Health for the government of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. Mr. Tariq Bajwa, he's the former Finance and Economic Affairs Secretary for the government of Pakistan and the former Chairman, Federal Board of Revenue. Mr. Tuan Min Ali, I hope I got the pronunciation right, lead economist at the World Bank. And last but not least, Syed Zafar Ali Shah Sahab. He's currently serving as the Senior Member Board of Revenue, Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. He's leading the reforms in the KP government, as Taimur Jhagra Sahab was just telling us briefly before we went online. I would like to ask Taimur Jhagra Sahab to begin the discussion, because I think before we began, he was very keen to tell us about some of the reforms that the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa government in particular has introduced. And it may be a good way of kicking off the debate or the discussion here by finding out what one particular province is doing. Over to you, Jhagra Sahab.
Thank you. I'll just try to be very quick. I didn't realize when I was talking earlier that we weren't on live. But basically, I just want to set the stage, because I think we are very serious in getting the input of this group in terms of implementing what we think is a very dynamic reform in terms of improving taxation in the agriculture sector. And I hope that it will also trigger off a pathway of growth in the agriculture sector, because it's a sector that's been stagnant for the longest time, and before some investment over the last couple of years. So I leave a lot of other comments in terms of our general taxation proposals and our tax revenue performance over the last 2 years, except to say that by being bold in trying to increase the tax base and in effectively in many places lowering rates or trying to get people on board and increase people's trust in the tax system, we've increased provincial revenue from 30 billion to 56 billion in 2 years. 30 to 42 in the first year, 42 to 56 in the last year. This had never grown over the last few years. Before that, the average revenue growth was less than 5% a year. We've achieved 75% in 2 years, roughly about 35% a year over the last 2 years or so. Previous जो हमने टैक्स रिफॉर्म किया KPRA में सेल्स टैक्स ऑन सर्विसेज पे प्रॉपर्टी टैक्सेस पे we saw that it actually helped increase collection. So we said, let's try a few things this year. And one of the unheralded steps has been what we've introduced in the agriculture sector. So we've done basically a couple of things. First, we've actually taken the land tax to zero that Ijaz Nabi Saab alluded to. It's very clear that agriculture sector में जो है the agriculture income tax, the spirit of the agriculture income tax simply wasn't be there, and effectively there's a nominal fastidious payment for land tax, which, for example, only really contributed 70 million to our national exchequer. So we've taken that down to zero. And that means that the small farmer does not really need to bother with the patwari anymore. And I think in terms of eliminating rent seeking and all these informal economies that exist, I think it's a transformative step. The second thing that we did was that we actually aligned the exemption limit for agriculture income tax from 4 lakh rupees, so 400,000 rupees a year, to 600,000 rupees a year, with income tax regulations that the FBR follows for other income tax payments. Doing these two things leaves us with the third element, which is we believe somewhere between 40 and 100,000 individuals in the province who will actually have to declare agriculture income tax, compute agriculture income and costs, and actually revive the spirit of the agriculture income tax. The sort of appetite for dynamism, and this is where I give credit to our senior member board of revenue, Zafar Ali Shah Saab, baad mein wo baat karenge. Because we did this in the budget, we agreed that post-budget we would working with experts on making this implementable, because this is a path that we want where we act as a trailblazer in the country, but figure out an implementation path. Now, this is, by the way, I just want to end by saying, this is not something that we're just doing because agriculture tax हमारा बहुत ज़्यादा हो जाएगा. We're not sure that there is that the tax potential is correlates to the agricultural GDP, because across Pakistan land ownings are small, and somewhere between 95 and 98% of agriculture. I think in KP it's actually more like 98%. We have very, very small farmers who basically doing subsistence agriculture or agriculture that supports family income, so on and so forth. Right. We're not doing it, therefore, for the tax potential primarily. We're doing it because A, it's the right thing to do. And the principle is that if it's income tax, right, it should be treated as income tax. And let's see where the potential takes us. And we believe that along with other reforms, it should start to ultimately create the scale in the agriculture sector, where you actually get agriculture managed at scale, that will ultimately actually create greater tax potential. But the other thing that we do it for is also that we see, and we've seen this in a number of places, that by simplifying the tax code here, the two changes that I mentioned first, by eliminating effectively the land tax and increasing the exemption limit, we're actually making people's lives easy. जो छोटा किसान है, उसको जो रेंट सीकिंग, जो पटवारी को 2, 3, 4, 5 हज़ार रुपए देने पड़ रहे थे. And by the way, Zafar Ali Shah Sahab is working on the patwar system as well, and getting new patwaris through ETA tests and introducing for the first time in Pakistan female patwaris into the system. But we want the small landowner, the small businessman to be burdened as little as possible. And at the same time, we want this income tax regime to work. So where I would love input from the group is how we make this workable. What are the different options in terms of a partnership with FBR? Do they become our collection agent? Or do people self-report agriculture tax and then FBR shares data with us and we actually audit selectively, right? Because remember, the knowledge base here is distributed. What does experience in other third world countries tell us? I think all of this is crucial to us because we've got a lot of momentum and we want to build on it. So we're here to learn and we're very excited about the session. And I'm very excited to see the names that are here. So I actually don't want to say more right now. I'll say more as the session progresses. But we're actually here not just for the panel discussion. We're here to ask for your help to make this implementable. Because we have done, no one has noticed, but we have done what the experts have been saying for the last 30, 40 years, and no province had dared to do it. So we believe that if we can be successful, this is a model that the rest of Pakistan can replicate. Thank you.
You're muted, Mr. Arifa.
Arifa, I think you're on mute.
You're muted, Arifa. You're still muted.
Is that better?
That's much better. Thank you.
Sorry, apologies for that. Thank you, Jagra Sahab. I was wondering now if Mr. Min Lee would like to jump in, because Jagra Sahab had obviously mentioned, implementation and obviously learning from other developing countries. So clearly he may have a few points to make here.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much. And I am very happy to be joining the panel in here, talking about very, very important, topic. And I heard Mr. Taimur Jagra. I think that the approach that you have proposed and then put in the legislation, that is a really critical part of, I do not know, without knowing a lot about like the system and the regime in Pakistan, the provinces and so on. But I hear that that is really the thing that the initiative that many developing countries really wish and want to go to that direction. And let me also think about a little bit about like the, step back a little bit and talk about like the regime in most of the other countries. First of all, let me put things in perspective and talk about like contextual framework for understanding the tax regime, and particularly as we talk about the agriculture income tax. When we talk about agriculture tax, that is, agriculture income tax is not different from other taxes. When we talk about like the design of the regime, revenue is one important part of that. But at the same time, we have to also reconcile with a lot of other very critical considerations for good tax regimes, like a protection of the poor, like the competitiveness of the farming and food security, and the and prices and efficiency and compliance. So and also talking about the revenue performance, it is not really optimistic if you look at like the trend in different countries. the collection has been down over the past decades, not increasing. And the direct income tax contribute only about from 0 to 20% of the total agriculture tax revenues and so on. And when we talk about like the income, agriculture income tax, we need to also distinguish between the characteristics of farming in developing and also developed countries. In developed countries, it is, the farming is more like it is more capital intensive. And for developing countries, that is really more labor intensive. It is more subsistence. And that's why we also observe that in developed countries and developing countries, the way the agriculture income tax is treated very much different. In developed countries, the agriculture income, the tax administrations normally and tax regimes require the farmers. Of course, we talk about also exemptions and so on. But the farmers have to declare declare the income, and they have to follow the rules as like the own other non-agriculture income. But in most of the developing countries, the agriculture income tax, the true form of that is less prevalent, and the main form of the tax is based on like the land area based, like it is it is the most common form of the taxation of the income taxation. It is just because of the huge political interference. It is a small scale subsistence, poor recourse of land area and quality. So coming to that, there are some promising examples that we can look at. One, for example, I look at the Mauritius, where the sugarcane and tobacco farmers, the country try to mimic like the better form of the income imputing for agriculture. And for those farmers, they can choose between going through like the presumptive with like a predetermined cost and predetermined sales that are decided by the revenue agency, or they can go with like their own declaration, like other developed countries do. So I think, and the election of the modality of the declaration and also the modality of the filing the tax return and so on is very much annual. And I think that is very important to give like the flexibility to farmers. And coming to the point that Mr. Taimu already mentioned, I think that as I said, it is a really promising, innovative, and I think that can deal with a lot of like the issues at hand in here, the revenue, equity, and so on. And the question is how we can make it work. And to me, without the very effective collaboration between the province and also the federal government, the FBR, it is a very, very, very hard to make it like the case. And particularly we are talking about like the taxing the true income or mimicking presumptive income for agriculture. We need some sort of cross-checking, some sort of the verification of the income with the FBR. And to me, FBR also benefits a lot from collaboration with provinces. Why is that? Because FBR also use that as the way that they enforce themselves to cross-check and also to audit and improve the quality of the enforcement as well for the other income, non-agriculture income tax enforcement. And the other point that I really appreciate, the Mr. Taimu presentation, that let's chase like the big guys and forget about like we need to avoid like taxing or hustling the small farmers. They are like, first of all, revenue addition might not be there. And the second thing, this thing is that we want to change them because that is a more like a small scale, non-commercial farming and so on. So that's what I think.
Thank you, sir. We'll be, because you mentioned the FPR in such great detail, we'll be moving on to Tariq Bajwa Saab. Bajwa Saab, over to you, sir. I think the questions have been raised by Mr. Lee, and we really need you to talk about the role that the FPR can play here. I mean, what has hindered, the kind of sort of data that needs to be collected in this regard, and obviously how does FPR, or how can the FPR work more closely with the provinces, especially on this issue?
Bajwa Saab muted हैं.
Bajwa Saab?
Ji, can you hear me now, Ji?
Ji.
Thank you, sir. Assalamu alaikum and good afternoon to everyone. Ji, before I start on the specific issues that you have just raised and address those, I'll just like to take 5 minutes to give a general understanding of the agriculture tax for me. देखिए बात ये है कि एग्रीकल्चर इनकम टैक्स, इसमें कोई दो राय है ही नहीं कि इस वक्त जो कलेक्शन हो रही है, इट्स अ पिटेंस ऑफ व्हाट एक्चुअली इज द पोटेंशियल फॉर द एग्रीकल्चर इनकम टैक्स. टू माय असेसमेंट, देयर इज अ टैक्स एक्सपेंडिचर की एस्टिमेट्स हैं जो डॉक्टर इजाज नबी साहब ने भी बताया 69 बिलियन के. मेरा ख्याल है एटलीस्ट इट इज ट्वाइस एज मच एज दैट. And if you talk about that, then what is being collected by the provinces collectively is not only 2 or 3% of that. Punjab has done, they think they've done a great job this year. They've increased it from 1 billion to 2 billion, but that's all that has been. So from about 150 billion, we are only collecting maybe at best, I think 3 or 4 billion rupees across Pakistan. So इसमें दो राय है ही नहीं है. Following डॉक्टर इजाज नबी साहब का जो आके जी इंग्लिश में हमने बात करनी है, तो इसमें दो राय है ही नहीं कि बिल्कुल एक मामूली सी पिटेंस एग्रीकल्चर इनकम टैक्स इकट्ठी हो रही है एज ऑफ टुडे. ये भी याद रखिए कि और इसकी हम क्यों इस पे परसू करना चाहते हैं. परसू इसलिए करना चाहते हैं कि एक्विटी डिमांड्स दैट ऑल इनकम मस्ट बी टैक्स्ड एक्विटेबली. दैट इज द सोल, सबसे बड़ा मकसद उसका ये. और दूसरा बड़ा मकसद उसका ये है कि अगर हमने इसको एक्विटेबली टैक्स ना किया तो वी क्रिएट लूप होल्स विद इन द सिस्टम्स फॉर टैक्स अवॉइडेंस एंड टैक्स एवेजन. एंड दैट इज एग्जैक्टली व्हाट इज गोइंग ऑन, एंड दैट्स व्हाट आई विल टॉक टू अ लिटिल लेटर आल्सो. इसमें भी कोई दो राय नहीं कि आपकी जो पाकिस्तान की जो मुकन्नना है, चाहे वो नेशनल असेंबली हो चाहे सूबाई असेंबलियां हो, वो डोमिनेटेड हैं उनके अंदर थ्रू द एग्रीकल्चर्स जो है, और लॉबीज उनकी इतनी स्ट्रांग है कि कोई मामूली सा भी उसके अंदर जो है आपको कानून साजी के लिए आपको एक पहाड़ सर करना पड़ता है. एंड in more cases than not, any initiative is then floundered on the rocks of the agriculture interest lobbies that we have. It's also, ये भी याद रखिए कि it is not as if the agriculture sector is not paying taxes. Now, what we were talking about is only the agriculture income tax. There have been different studies done, and I think one of the most prominent studies done in this sector was done by one Mr. Lal. It's an old study, but still it was informative in the sense that the contribution of the agriculture sector in total to the taxes that are being paid, whether the sales tax and the custom duties, is around 20%. So they are paying a taxes. It's only that the agriculture income tax part of it is not being paid. So it's not as if the agriculturist lobby is not paying the sales tax and the custom duties. They are doing that. They're contributing to the total economic welfare and the fiscal resources of the country. अब इशू जो है जी वो आ जाता है कि इसके ऊपर कि जी एग्रीकल्चर इनकम टैक्स के ऊपर आप ये भी देख लीजिए कि एग्रीकल्चर इनकम टैक्स का ब्रीफली अगर हम देख लें, just look at the real sectors of the GDP. We talk about the agriculture sector's contribution at 19.2%. This is from the economic survey for the last financial year. Financial year 21, the contribution was 19.2%. But the contribution of the crop sector was less than 7% to the GDP. And if you look at the agriculture income tax laws, whether it is for the Punjab or for KP or for any other province, they tax only cultivated land. which means crops, or at best orchards, or at best, nurseries. That is all that is being taxed. So we must look at it from the context of not 19.2%. The largest contributor to the agriculture is the subsector of livestock, which mostly is in the informal sector. When it's in the corporate sector, it is being taxed like normal corporations. So we must see that it is only less than 7%, which is the contribution to the GDP from the crop sector, which under the existing laws is to be taxed. It's not 19.2%. And I can give you quote you the section of the law, just mein kehta hai ki cropped jo hoga, it has to be sown at least once a year in order for it to be qualified for payment of taxes. So ek hi baat ye. अब आप ये देखिए कि इसके अंदर अब हम ये देख लें कि जी बट डिस्पाइट दैट जो मैं पहले कह रहा था कि अगर आप इसका एक एस्टिमेट जो मैं लगाता हूँ और मैंने इस पर कुछ काम किया हुआ है वो ये है कि अगर आपकी टोटल कंट्रीब्यूशन जो है फ्रॉम द क्रॉप सेक्टर फ्रॉम द एग्रीकल्चर सेक्टर इज क्लोज टू अराउंड 3 ट्रिलियन रुपीस टू पाकिस्तान जीडीपी. अगर उसके अंदर आप 7% का लगा लें तो वी आर टॉकिंग अबाउट 7%, उसको 19.2 को 7 पे कर लें तो वी आर टॉकिंग अबाउट 1200-1300 बिलियन. 1200-1300 बिलियन की कंट्रीब्यूशन है जो मैंने उसको सॉरी इसलिए कट किया है कि जी आपकी जो आपकी होल्डिंग पैटर्न है पंजाब में वो ऐसा है कि 95-94% झगड़ा साहब ठीक कह रहे हैं ऑफ द लैंड होल्डिंग्स आर बिलो सब्सिस्टेंस होल्डिंग. लेकिन जो टोटल लैंड साइज है विच इज अ डिफरेंट थिंग वो तकरीबन 35-40% जो है इज अबव सब्सिस्टेंस होल्डिंग. Because the big landlords hold more than what a small landlord owner would be. So मेरे अंदाजे के मुताबिक जो मैंने काम किया एस्टिमेट के मुताबिक तकरीबन कोई 35 से 40% आपकी फार्म ऐसी हैं जो टैक्स होनी चाहिए of the total land area. Now if the total contribution of the crop sector as said is about 1200 billion, so we are talking about कि जी ये आपकी कम से कम अगर 10% पे लगाएं तो 120 बिलियन टैक्स होना चाहिए और अगर हम इसके ऊपर लगाएं जी अपना 15% की एवरेज लगा लें तो ये आपका टैक्स होना चाहिए कोई 180 बिलियन के करीब. So anywhere between I think roughly we can take an estimate of 150 billion is what should be the tax potential, the true tax potential, while what we are recovering at the moment is only about 3 billion rupees. Now, we must also juxtapose it with the overall tax system that we are following in Pakistan. Again, from the economic survey, the cost of tax expenditure last year was 1,310 billion rupees. That was the tax foregone, 1,310 billion rupees. It has increased by 14% over the previous year. And this year, at the very end, some fresh tax concessions have also been given. So, well, yes, equity demands, we have to plug the loophole, but is agriculture tax the panacea for our fiscal problems? I don't think so. However, as I said, it must be taxed because all equity and to plug the loopholes. But I just wanted to contextualize the entire discussion of how things are with these facts that I thought I must share with all of you. अब सवाल आ गया कि जी आपने जो एफबीआर के साथ करना है वो क्या करना है. पंजाब के अंदर एफबीआर के अंदर हमने ये किया था कि ये कहा कि जो अगर आप कोई एग्रीकल्चर इनकम डिक्लेयर करेंगे तो एफबीआर सिर्फ वो एक्सेप्ट करेगा जिसके ऊपर आपने जरी इनकम टैक्स दिया होगा. और आज भी अगर किसी साहब का या साहिबा का केस ऑडिट में आ जाता है तो वो उससे मांगते हैं कि आप बताइए कि अपनी जरी इनकम टैक्स आपने कितना इस पे दिया और उसके बाद उसके मुताबिक उसको करते हैं. बट देयर इज अ कैच इवन हियर एंड झगड़ा साहब आप इस पे जरा देयर इज नो सच प्रोविजन, एटलीस्ट आई कुडंट फाइंड एनी सच प्रोविजन इन द इनकम टैक्स ऑर्डिनेंस ऑफ केपी. देयर इज अ सेक्शन 3B in the income tax ordinance of income tax act of the government of Punjab. That act says, and I'll read it to you. And it's very interesting, and I think this was done as a corollary of what we were able to do in the federal government, and as a result, they also did it in the provincial government. Now, Section 3B says, notwithstanding the provisions of Section 3 where any person has declared agriculture income for any assessment year in the return filed under the income tax ordinance, the person shall pay the tax on such income at the rate specified in the second schedule. So उसके लिए उन्होंने एक अलग शेड्यूल क्रिएट कर दिया. बट अनफॉर्चुनेटली हुआ ये कि वो जो शेड्यूल है वो उस रेट से तो कदरे ज्यादा है जो आम जिम्मेदार पे लगता था. बट इवन when compared to the income tax schedule, it is less than half. So there even the government of Punjab and the legislature of Punjab gave a huge relaxation to those who had voluntarily declared their agriculture income. उनको किसी ने जबरदस्ती नहीं कहा था, उन्होंने खुद voluntarily ये कहा कि हाँ अपने इनकम टैक्स के अंदर जो एफपीआर में फाइल होगा मेरी 10 लाख रुपए आमदन है. भाई अगर तुम खुद वॉलंटियर कर रहे हो कि तुम्हारी 10 लाख एग्रीकल्चर से इनकम है तो फिर उस पर कम से कम हुकूमत पंजाब उतना टैक्स तो ले ले जितना फेडरल एफपीआर लेती है. मेरे पास वो शेड्यूल सारा है और I've done a comparison also, but it is exactly half. मैं मसलन आपको बता देता हूँ कि where the total income exceeds rupees 2.24 million but does not exceed 48 million, 60,000 plus 10%. यही जब आप उसको ट्रांसलेट करते हैं एफबीआर के अंदर तो वो आ जाता है 25%. Under this agriculture income tax law, it is only 10% for those who have voluntarily declared it. मैं बार बार इस चीज पे जोर दे रहा हूँ, इन पे किसी ने कोई असेसमेंट नहीं की. इन्होंने खुद कहा कि जी हाँ हमारी इतनी एग्रीकल्चर इनकम है और उसके बावजूद जो है वो सिर्फ 10% दे रहे हैं. और अगर यही इनकम उनकी किसी और सोर्स से आ रही होती तो वो 25% होता. तो मेरी तो गुजारिश हुकूमत पंजाब से भी यही है जो मैं अब उनसे कर रहा हूँ और झगड़ा साहब से भी यही है कि सबसे पहले तो इसको ठीक कर दीजिए. इसको आप ठीक कर देंगे तो ऑटोमेटिकली आपने जो एक लूप होल क्रिएट किया वो बंद हो जाएगा. नतीजतन क्या होगा, ज्यादा से ज्यादा ये होगा कि वो लोग जिसको इस्तेमाल करते हैं फॉर टैक्स अवॉइडेंस, they'll start justifying their income through other sources. If they do start justifying their income from other sources, it's a win-win even then, because the provincial governments are stakeholders. The biggest stakeholders of whatever FBR collects are the provincial governments. 57.5% is being collected, is being distributed to the provinces. So it's a win-win for them also. So ये तो बड़ा ही आसान loophole है जिसको आप उसको आप block कर सकते हैं. All you have to do is make an amendment in your law, which is then must be at the same schedule, same rate as the FBR's rates or the income tax of the federal government. दूसरा जो है इसके ये जो information कुछ है वो इस वक्त already FBR ने सूबों के साथ share करनी शुरू कर दी है. At least they have started doing it with the government of Punjab. The government of Punjab is getting information from the FBR on those assessees or those income tax payees who have also declared agricultural income. Now that information is available with the provincial governments. Zafar साहब आप भी ये ले सकते हैं उनसे, FBR से ले सकते हैं. अच्छा अब उसके अंदर होता क्या है कि हमारे यहाँ there has been some digitization of land record, but there is a long way to go yet. Punjab has taken a lead in it many years back. We are able to almost 95% of the Mauzas or the revenue states in Punjab have computerized land record. But unfortunately, that land record is not backed by your national identity card number. So if I have a land in adjoining Mauzas even, the record cannot talk to one another. So अगर मैं एग्रीकल्चर इनकम 10 लाख डिक्लेयर कर दूं और यहाँ दूं ही ना या टैक्स दूं सिर्फ 2 एकड़ के ऊपर, तो सिस्टम खुद उसको नहीं पकड़ सकता. इसको पकड़ने के लिए क्योंकि कोई मेरे एडजॉइनिंग मौजाज में है वो इंफॉर्मेशन सिस्टम कोलेट ही नहीं कर सकता. इसको कोलेट करने के लिए आपको इंफॉर्मेशन आपको लेनी है एफबीआर से जो दे रहे हैं, पंजाब गवर्नमेंट को उन्होंने दी है, और उसके बेसिस के ऊपर आपने ये देखना है कि अगर तारिक बाजवा ने 10 लाख रुपए अपनी इनकम वहां डिक्लेयर की है तो वो तारिक बाजवा से सवाल कर सकते हैं कि तुम बताओ कि तुम्हारे अगर 4 मुआवजात के अंदर जमीन है तो तुम टोटल 10 लाख के ऊपर इतना टैक्स दे दो. सो ये 2 बड़े लो हैंगिंग फ्रूट्स हैं जिनको हम ले सकते हैं एज फार एज दी collaboration with the FBR is concerned. This is the brass tacks. There's nothing fancy about it. This is the hard drudgery that has to be done. And that's how taxes are being collected and will be collected in the future also. Now, before I conclude, and I'm open to questions later, let me also say that while it is, the ideal is that it all must be on an assessment basis. Jagra Sahab has about 40,000 or anywhere between 40,000 and 80,000 potential taxpayers as far as the agriculture is concerned. The Punjab has over 500,000. Now look at and the documentation has been the Achilles heel of the FBR also, which has you might denigrate the FBR to any extent, but the fact remains that they're doing a decent job. And compared with the provincial revenue authorities and the provincial board of revenues, their capacity to collect taxes is many, many times more than that of the provincial board of revenues or the provincial revenue authorities. And they have a history of over almost 100 years. The first income tax ordinance came into the 1920s, so almost 100 years. Now, can we go out in each Moza and say, all right, we need to go into a documentation? Ideally, yes, but pragmatically, is it possible? I think that's a question that we need to debate also at some other forum. And if not, then what are the proxy options that we have? Proxy options are the produce index units. Incidentally, I did a study on this subject for the World Bank a long time back.
Sahab, we're running out of time, sir. Zara, if you can just quickly.
Last sentence, please. And then, but we were also looking at the annual rental value. The difficulty with the PIU is that it was last calculated in 1940, and they're completely outdated. But we can do ARVs, annual rental valuation tables, and on the basis of that, we can do that. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ji. Thank you so much, sir. Dr. Haneed Mukhtar Sahab. Sir, FPR का जिक्र किया है बाजवा साहब ने, between him and Jagra Sahab, ideas तो बहुत है sir. Clearly everybody knows what needs to be done. पर वही सवाल बार बार जो हम पाकिस्तान में पूछते हैं कि everybody has the answers, but why are we so unable to implement them? और खास तौर पे agriculture tax के हवाले से सर जरूर इस पे नजर डालिएगा. Please do throw some light on this. Over to you.
Thank you, Arifa. Well, first of all, let me say, I tend to agree all that Bajwa Sahab has said. I think that was a very comprehensive, not just pointing out the problem, but also giving certain solution, and I agree with him almost entirely. Let me reinforce what Bajwa Sahab has said. And although not the perfect measure of the vertical, the horizontal inequity that agriculture income tax has created. From 2019-20 to 1999-2000 to 2019-20, nominal agricultural value added in crop agriculture has increased 6.7-fold. And as Bajwa Sahab was saying, the agriculture income tax increased from 1.7 billion to 2.7 billion, an increase of 80% over 20 years. And converting them into ratios, which is striking, is that every rupee earned in agriculture pays a tax of 0.07%. And every rupee earned in as non-farm income pays a tax of 4.2%. Now the differential is 6,000 times. That's how much more a non-agriculture income tax and income is being taxed vis-a-vis agriculture. So that's what we are talking about. This differential is the problem. The horizontal inequity that everybody is talking about is so stark that we cannot ignore it. You just cannot look the other way. You have to do something. And there are a number of ways to go about handling that. Let me, before I get back to the solution, which are almost entirely what Bajwa Sahab has said, so that makes my life a little easy. The problem fundamental, which Bajwa Sahab alluded to, is if there is no political will, nothing would work. You try whatever technical solution you want to adopt, it's not going to work. We have seen that a number of times. Just to give you an example of that, in 1997, we started implementing agriculture income tax. And at that time, the land revenue all over Pakistan was collected at about rupees 2 billion. We abolished land revenue. So basically, with the imposition of agricultural income tax, we are subsidizing agriculture because we abolished the tax which was giving more revenue and instituted a tax which was collecting less. To add to that, the government, federal government, was collecting ushur on agriculture. And that dried up with the imposition of agriculture income tax. So at the end of the day, the agriculture was paying much less taxes after the imposition of agriculture income tax than it was doing before. And the reason we all know, we do not want to call it, but it's all political. Then coming to the tax gap, everybody talking about, FBR estimated that at about 70 billion in 2020. Anjum and I did some work in 2016 where we estimated in Punjab the tax gap of about 53 billion only in Punjab. But is that because of the tax compliance, or is that just some fictitious number we are talking about? If you look at why is this huge tax gap there? If you look at agriculture income tax, yes, there is a tax gap, a huge tax gap. It's a 97% tax gap. But if you look at what Punjab, for example, was collecting and is collecting now, Punjab was collecting 1.6 billion rupees in agriculture income tax in 2014-15. And our estimate, Anjum and my estimate from that study, that land tax collected, the potential of land tax was 2.1. So 2.1 billion was the potential of land tax. And let me tell you, almost entire agricultural income tax is collected as land tax, especially in Punjab. So there is no tax gap, but very little tax gap, 24%. Because out of 2.1, Punjab is collecting in 2019 at least, was collecting 1.6 billion. The problem is the structure. The problem is enforcement. The structure, no other, to my knowledge at least, no other income that is generated in this country is given an option to be taxed on two separate modes. I'm so delighted to hear Jagra Saab that they have abolished the land tax and it's only the income tax that they are going with. But in other provinces, that distinction is there. The taxpayer is given a de facto choice.
Dr. Saab, we have to move on. So please, maaf kariyega. I'm interrupting you, but zara, we're running out of time.
लेकिन the issue क्या है? Issue ये है कि BOR, as Bajwa Saab pointed out, it was created to collect land taxes. It is not even after 20 years of imposition of agriculture, it's not ready to collect the income tax. It can only collect land taxes. That's what it was created for, that's what it was trained for, and that's all it can do. So if you abolish land taxes and just go with income taxes, probably BOR is not the right vehicle that you should be using. And I think I agree with Bajwa Saab. The board of the authorities in Punjab and KP and the board, the Sindh Revenue Board, probably are a better vehicle to collect income tax, agriculture income tax, than Jagra Saab. Delighted to hear what you said about the reform in agriculture sector, but a little bit of disappointment. The little disappointment is that we have been treating agriculture as a sacred cow throughout our existence. And that you have not done away with. Putting up a 6 lakh rupees.
Dr. Saab, I have to move on, Ji, please.
Please, go ahead, sorry. What I was saying that inequity would remain, the tax evasion, the door would still remain open if you put up a higher threshold limit on agriculture and income tax than what is for non-agriculture. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, and my apologies. Zafar Ali Shah Saab, sir, I think you were wanting to say something. Would you like to go next, sir? But please, sir, waqt zara kam hai, so if I can be rude enough to ask you to be brief.
Thank you, Ji. I was just waiting for the other seniors to speak first. So always then you have the least time. But anyway, I will try to come in at the operational end. But still, I just want to share first this, that I remember in 1997, the Punjab, I was working in Punjab, the target was 1 billion in 1997. And then I joined BOR and I learned that their collection is still 1 billion after 25 years. At that time, I had the experience of sending 5,000 notices to the first taxpayers of agriculture in Sheikhupura, which is adjacent to Lahore. So it's good that I had that kind of experience, very operational at the basic level. Today, I'm SMBR here in the province. So I think most of our seniors, Tariq Bajwa Saab, our economists, other colleagues have expertly said that obviously it's a pittance. Obviously, 25 years is a stagnation, and we have given special treatment to agriculture. So agriculture income tax. And there are so many reasons the experts have deliberated fix, because coming to the provincial perspective, and I'm very happy that this kind of a forum is talking on this. I was not aware, thanks to our dynamic finance minister, because he's a technocrat politician, so we have the benefit of that bringing me in. Some of these reforms and what I'm hearing from the very senior gentlemen who are talking at the macro level, we have started doing it, some of the basic work. And I admit it's very basic work, and we have done it over the last 7-8 months. And I've noted most of those points, but I would still say we are at the beginning of it. One is that now, after 25 years, maybe in the province at least, we have a policy support. So that is the kind of change which we feel. And because of that policy support, we had started working on agriculture income tax per se few months back, besides so many other tax reforms. And in just the property tax, we had this excellent experience of reducing the taxes, reducing the number of interfaces between the consumer and the buyer and the government servant. And we got excellent result, 160%, 60% increase in the overall revenue. So coming to the specifics, one point very important, and I would agree that if livestock is out, that means in our province 70% is 70 to 75% is livestock. So straight away we are talking of a very small regime of taxation. So this is a very important consideration for the forum to consider. And of course, I have noted it down. I just read my law as Mr. Tariq Bajwa was pointing to Section 3B of the Punjab, and our law doesn't mention livestock specifically, but it talks of certain products which come out of agriculture. So I was just looking how to start on the livestock from the present law, but I've noted it down. We can always make changes. 70 to 75% is livestock, which value adds. So that is an area where we will be looking after from now on. Secondly, there's this talk about information with FBR. Very fortunately for us, 6 to 8 months back, when we were starting on the reform, I talked to my batchmate. We have a very good civil service network who is the chief of the income tax. And I got some initial data of the top people claiming of exemption of agriculture. So that was our start. Now we have an MOU, and this is a formal document with FBR. So normally such an MOU signed one-sided. FBR wanted all the property tax data. We are going to give it. But we have added the clause of agriculture information from them. So this is in the final stages. So we will have the updated data as admitted by the people of their agriculture income tax. In the agriculture laws also, we took 2-3 main changes. One was that we found the data is a bit old of the shareholding. It's about 1 million people, landowners. What we did was 7 lakh people we exempted this year from land tax, became zero, even from agriculture income tax. We are just focusing on the top 1 lakh, although the data is a bit dated still, I would admit that, but we are going to focus on only 1 lakh big taxpayers. The formula, we still have kept the fixed kind of regime, but we have introduced the income tax kind of formula also there. So that is very much part of our law and schedule. We are going to follow that. Interestingly, while Mr. Bajwa Saab, who is our senior, and I just noted many of his points, he said that it should be in consonance with the FBR. But because we are going for something new, so we are not looking for straight away tenfolding our kind of income tax. We are just trying to bring it above and create that kind of a culture. So still, I remember the FBR one time went from 4 lakh exemption to 12 lakh, and it came back then to maybe 4 or 6 lakh. So that kind of changes the FBR is doing in the last couple of years. So maybe it will not always be in consonance with that, but at least it will be in sync with that. That is what we've been doing.
Thank you, sir. Sir, we need to move on. So if you could just quickly conclude.
Just the last 2 points, and very essential, because I'm the only one maybe representing the provincial where we have to collect the tax. The 2 points. We have a very much better ecosystem at the BOR now and at the provincial level. Digitization, Punjab did 95%. In last 1 year, digitization, we moved from 10 to 50%. Next year, our digitization of the province will be 100%. So we have that ecosystem also there. And also we are building the capacities this year in taxation. We had a lot of improvement. We are improving our HR. So the provincial BOR, in my view, taking the data from our colleagues in the FBR, is very much has the capacity to launch and collect and do the operational part of it. So this is my humble submission at the end of the discussion.
Thank you so much. Now that we've had all the, we've had the expert opinion, we've had the government's view. So let us now turn to an actual farmer and ask him how he or his entire community view all these efforts, and obviously the entire discourse around getting the agriculture income tax up and running. Bhandara Saab, sir, last but not least for sure, but please, sir, try to be brief. We have very little time left.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much to CDPR and the World Bank, and especially thanks for inviting a farmer here to at least speak. Otherwise, we are always tell you need to do this. So thanks a lot. But well, when you are talking about the agriculture tax gap, and the first thing people are thinking about, and even I listen to the comments from guys beside me who are not into agriculture, that oh, tum tax chori kar rahe ho, tum tax nahi dete. So I don't think this is true. Every farmer, from a very small tenant of just 1 acre to the large farmer, paying some taxes on inputs from diesel, pesticides, fertilizer, and most importantly, seed. I was just calculating with a fuel station owner. For last 15 days, every farmer is paying 17.5 liter tax on 1 liter of diesel. If you're talking about the maize seed, there is around import custom duty और इस तरह की जो चीजें हैं वो कोई 10% के करीब लगती हैं. मैं चूंकि फार्मर हूँ तो अंग्रेजी और उर्दू शायद मिक्स करके ज्यादा बेहतर रहेगा, क्योंकि लोग फार्मिंग कम्युनिटी से भी सुन रहे होंगे इसको. तो अगर इसी तरह हम इलेक्ट्रिक ट्यूबवेल की बात करते हैं,
बड़ी खुशी से मिक्स कीजिए.
थैंक यू एजाज नबी साहब, थैंक यू वेरी मच. अगर आप इलेक्ट्रिक ट्यूबवेल की बात करते हैं तो मेरा जो पिछले महीने का ट्यूबवेल का बिल था उसमें एक इलेक्ट्रिसिटी की यूनिट की जो पावर कॉस्ट थी वो 7.5 रुपीज थी. उसके ऊपर मेरा जो टैक्स है वो 3.5 रुपीज था. और ये टैक्स हम दे क्यों रहे हैं? जो फार्मर, कोई भी अगर आप किसी भी बंदे से टैक्स लेते हैं तो उसके एवज उसको सपोर्ट चाहिए होती है. मैं ट्यूबवेल के ईच यूनिट के ऊपर टैक्स देता हूं और मुझे उसकी सपोर्ट ये मिल रही होती है कि अगर 1 महीने का मेरा बिल शॉर्ट होता है तो मेरे दरवाजे के ऊपर वबला का लाइनमैन खड़ा होता है कि आइदर यू आर पेइंग नाउ और आई एम गोइंग टू डिस्कनेक्ट दैट इलेक्ट्रिसिटी. मेरी इनकम अगर 4 माह बाद है, 5 माह बाद है, 6 महीने बाद है, जबकि मैंने बिल जो है वो पर मंथ पे करना है विद टैक्सेस. सेम एज विद अगर आप फर्टिलाइजर की बात करते हैं तो एनुअली जो आपकी फॉस्फोरस फर्टिलाइजर वो 450 से वो 500 बिलियन रुपीस की पता चलती है कुछ रिसोर्सेज से. उसके ऊपर 2% अगर टैक्स है तो वो 9 बिलियन रुपीस, 9 अरब रुपए टैक्स फार्मर पे कर रहा होता है. लाइफ स्टॉक और डेयरी की बात हो रही है. आई एम वेरी हैप्पी कि प्राइम मिनिस्टर ऑफ पाकिस्तान इज हिमसेल्फ जो बहुत अच्छा सोच रहे हैं कि डेयरी के ऊपर काम किया जाए. तो केपी में जहां पे या उन एरियाज के अंदर जहां पे चारा उगाया नहीं जा सकता, वहां पे साइलेज को प्रमोट किया जा रहा है। साइलेज की जो सबसे एसेंशियल आइटम है प्रिजर्व करने की, उसकी फिल्म के ऊपर कोई 50% से ज्यादा इंपोर्ट ड्यूटीज और टैक्सेस हैं। एंड वी आर टॉकिंग अबाउट एग्रीकल्चर सेक्टर कि हम उसको किस तरह बढ़ा सकते हैं। सिमिलरली अगर आप हमारे स्मॉल फार्मर्स के पास बहुत से टूल्स नहीं है एग्रीकल्चर के, बहुत से ऐसे लोग हैं जिनके पास ट्रैक्टर्स भी अवेलेबल नहीं है। अगर किसी के पास कोई पैसा है और वो आप सर्विस प्रोवाइडर बनना चाहता है, तो उसको अगर वो सर्विस प्रोविजन देता है वहां पे, तो उसको कोई तकरीबन 27% जीएसटी और इनकम टैक्स की मद में देना पड़ता है। जबकि अगर वही पैसा वो कंस्ट्रक्शन में लगाता है तो उसको बहुत सी छूट मिल जाती है। इसी तरह आपको बहुत से जो है, हम तीन तरह के जो फार्मर्स हैं, मैं ये समझता हूँ हम तीन तरह के टैक्सेस देते हैं। एक हमारा जो इनडायरेक्ट टैक्सेस है जिनकी मैंने बात की, डायरेक्ट टैक्सेस हैं जो हम आबियाना की सूरत में देते हैं, और एक इनफॉर्मल टैक्सेस भी गांव में देहातों के तौर पे होता है। देखिए, जब आप स्टेट की फैसिलिटीज की टैक्स की एवज बात करते हैं तो शहरों के अंदर, चाहे वो स्कूल हो, चाहे वो तालीम हो, चाहे वो हेल्थ हो, चाहे वो वाटर सप्लाईज हो, वो सारी स्टेट ओन्ड होती हैं और स्टेट ही उनको रन करती है। जबकि देहातों के जो अंदर, जो गांव के अंदर ऐसा नहीं होता। इट इज वी द पीपल, जो उस लोग के होते हैं जो लैंड भी डोनेट करते हैं। हमारे केस में मैं अपनी एग्जांपल आपको देता हूं कि मेरे गांव के अंदर एक यूनियन काउंसिल है, एक हमारे पास प्राइमरी बॉयज स्कूल है, एक गर्ल्स स्कूल है, एक ज़राअत का ऑफिस है और एक वाटर सप्लाई स्कीम है। ये सारी जो है वो हमारी लैंड्स हमने डोनेट की हैं। और वाटर सप्लाई स्कीम जब आप अर्बन की बात कर रहे होते हैं, वहां पे सरकार टैक्सेस से रन कर रही होती है, जबकि रूरल में वो भी देहातों के जिम्मे होता है कि आपने जो है वो उसको पे करना है। अब अगर हम आ जाते हैं कि अजम्पशन है कि एग्रीकल्चर जो इनकम टैक्स है उसका थोड़ा सा मैं जिक्र करना चाहूंगा।
भंडारा
देखिए,
साहब जरा
मैं
जल्दी रैप अप कर दीजिएगा सर।
जी, मैं जल्दी मैम कोशिश कर रहा हूँ। देखिए, मेरे कुछ सवालात भी है ना कि अगर आप एग्रीकल्चर की इनकम टैक्स लगाना चाह रहे हैं, पिछले साल गंदम का रेट जो सरकारी था वो 1400 रुपए था। मुझसे असिस्टेंट कमिश्नर साहिबान की मदद से 1400 रुपए में गंदम खरीद ली गई। ठीक एक महीने के बाद वही गंदम 2000 को टच की। सिमिलरली इस साल में 1800 रुपए सरकारी रेट था, अब 1700 रुपए में मंडी में जाके बिकी। आप कौन सी इनकम को टैक्स कर रहे होंगे वहां जाके? आपको सबसे बड़े मसाइल आएंगे, आपकी डॉक्यूमेंटेशन नहीं है। आप फार्मर्स के पीछे भागने की बात कर रहे हैं। यू आर नॉट एक्चुअली लुकिंग इनटू द एग्रीकल्चर मार्केटिंग सिस्टम। हमारा तो इनफॉर्मल सिस्टम है। हमारा तो छोटा फार्मर जो है वो बेचारा बैंक जा भी नहीं सकता। सबसे बड़े मसाइल है कि वो आप अपनी जो इस तरह के टूल्स उसके पास अवेलेबल हैं। मैं तो पढ़ी लिखी बात कर रहा हूँ, अंग्रेजी भी समझ सकता हूँ, अंग्रेजी बोल भी सकता हूँ। हमारे ज्यादातर फार्मर ऐसे हैं, वो बड़े फार्मर होने के बावजूद जो है वो पढ़े लिखे नहीं है। वो आपको टैक्स रिटर्न्स किस तरह जमा करवाएंगे? आप उनको तो इनकम का नहीं पता, तो इनकम टैक्स आप उनको किस तरह लेके चलेंगे? मेरे ख्याल के मुताबिक अगर आप एग्रीकल्चर की वैल्यू चेन को अकाउंटेबल कर लेते हैं, आप अगर एग्रीकल्चर जो मंडी के अंदर बैठा हुआ है, देखिए एग्रीकल्चर जो आपकी मार्केट कमेटीज हैं, झगड़ा साहब सुन रहे हैं, ही बेटर नो कि पंजाब में क्या हो रहा है और क्या होता चला आया है। एग्रीकल्चर की जो मार्केट कमेटीज हैं वो उसी तरह परफॉर्म कर ही नहीं रही, क्योंकि उनके जो चेयरमैन हैं वो हमेशा से इररिलेवेंट लोग लगाए जाते हैं। उनको आप सियासी कह लें या जो भी कह लें। तो जब आपका, देखें, 10 फार्मर्स के पीछे जाने से बेहतर है कि एक आड़ती के पास चले जाएं, एक मिडल मैन के पास चले जाएं, उसके रोल को लिमिट कर दें। आई एम नॉट टॉकिंग अबाउट द एलिमिनेशन ऑफ द रोल ऑफ द मिडल मैन। देखिए, तमाम खाते आपको मिडल मैन के पास मिल जाएंगे और मेरे ख्याल में वहीं से आपकी टैक्स की जो मामला आते हैं वो भी दुरुस्त हो जाएंगे।
We need to look at the entire food chain, as you're saying. Jhagda Sahab, very quick, sir, concluding remarks from you before we open up to the audience.
I want to try and keep it very short. I think I'd like to thank everyone who contributed. I learned a bit, and I hope that those who feel that they can contribute, because हमने इसको implement करना है, right? That those who feel they can contribute can feel free to reach out. यहाँ पे 2-3 बातें जो है वो कहूँगा। एक जो बाजवा साहब ने कही, I think perhaps given his experience in the FBR and in the province and the federal government, perhaps invaluable resource. Well, one thing is, while in principle I agree कि वो tax rates में alignment complete होनी चाहिए with the FBR, you know, I think while it's signal, but it's such a, as a first move, what I would just love is at the end of this year, because agriculture income tax logon ne saal baad dena hoga, that we can actually have a mechanism jahan se jo bhi hai 40,000 farmers hai, 50,000 hai, 100,000 hai, that they are able to file their returns, because I don't think these people, and I personally come from a family where my father, my uncle have been agriculturists, although hamari land ownings KP में बहुत छोटी होती हैं relatively. But you know, people don't keep a P&L in agriculture as they do if they run a business. And that's what we're asking them to do. तो उनको कुछ train करना पड़ेगा. I'm very, very pleased जो वो कह रहे हैं कि FBR के साथ जो data sharing है, वो आराम से हो सकती है. तो पहली तो चीज़ ये, let's take a start and let's make sure that this is successful, because I think the failure of many reforms, it's interesting, मुझे ये recently पता चला कि agriculture income tax 97 में introduce हुआ था. Probably World Bank ने कराया होगा, किसी ने कहा होगा कि ये कर लें. We typically end up doing these things with the will not to implement them. So what ends up happening is कि हमने वो जो हानिद मुख्तार साहब ने कहा कि duality दे दी, लोगों को option दे दिया कि आप land tax भी दे सकते हैं, agriculture income tax भी दे सकते हैं. And that effectively designed the system to fail. पहली चीज़. I feel we in KP can be pioneers, because इससे भी मैं disagree करता हूँ कि there was one sort of cliche that was repeated कि हो नहीं सकता, political will नहीं है. Political will तो है, हमने कर दिया within discussions of a month or so कर दिया. And we are here because, as I said, we wanted to have a discussion on implementation. जो आखिरी चीज़ मैं कहना चाहता हूँ जो बंदारा साहब ने कही, I have a lot of sympathy, and I think as we start to change the regulatory framework of the agriculture sector, absolutely right कि हमने यहाँ पे हमारा पहला target जो है वो growth होना चाहिए. But honestly, I think whatever segment of the economy I have talked to, whether as a politician or whether before that as a technocrat, everyone keeps saying, हम अगर ये टैक्स नहीं देते ये तो देते. I think the fact is कि हमारा टैक्स टू GDP 10% है, वो है, and that is significantly lower than it needs to be, and that is something that we need to address. तो जो spirit यहाँ पे थी end में, and why I feel, you know, as I said, I feel, और जो ज़फ़र अली शाह साहब और मैंने काम किया कि in the end, let's say if someone is making 10 crore rupees of profit on agriculture, net profit, so in spirit, जैसे तारिक बाजवा साहब ने कहा, at that point, whatever inputs you've paid, because you input diesel pay, fertilizer pay, every other sector pays as well, right? So there I can have sympathy to say कि हम फिलहाल अपने वो rates वही रखें जो हैं, and I think the rates are lower than the FBR, so there is still technically that arbitrage opportunity, right? But we're actually at the moment asking people जो कि जाके पटवारी से जो है वो 100 कनाल की अगर वो उनकी हो, वो उसकी per square foot वो land tax दे के 10-20 हज़ार रुपए दे देते थे, they're going to have to end up paying 4, 5, 6, 10 times more even under our current rates. So I think the first thing is to make this successful. What we found in the last 2 years in other sectors is हमने फिलहाल trust भी build करना है. I think बंडारा साहब के लिए भी आसान हो जाएगा over time. मैं conceptually बात कर रहा हूँ. If we can actually show कि वो पैसे जो आते हैं यहाँ से, they're reinvested in the sector in a meaningful way. कि extension services जो है वो बेहतर होती हैं, because I know that, you know, I know my family's never used any of these जो वो करते हैं कि agriculture में कहीं ना कहीं जो tax देता है उसको कहीं ना कहीं और भी वो break, and we're going to need to be creative about this, because ultimately हमने a willingness to pay create करनी है, and that willingness to pay needs to be aligned to sort of impact. So I think the real challenge is now basically going ahead. But I'm very excited, and I was happy to see a little bit of the acknowledgement that people are recognizing कि हमने ठीक काम किया. तो वो तो हम 2-3 बंदे कमरे में बैठ के just felt wrong कि अगर मैं लाख रुपए जो है as a consulting business कमाऊं और वो मेरा net profit हो, उसका तो 30% जाता है. लेकिन अगर मैं लाख रुपए net profit agricultural crop से ही कमाऊं कि उसके लिए मैं पटवारी को जो है वो 2,000 रुपए दे के I can be legally covered. And that is the challenge that I think needs to be solved, and where I hope that a year from now we can actually sit and say कि हमने इसके implementation का तरीका भी निकाल दिया. And that's going to depend on how people file their forms at the end of 2021-22. I think उसमें FBR का एक role होगा. I've had initial discussions with Shaukat Tareen Saab, who is also very excited about the step and collaborating on this. I think obviously हमारी will का role होगा, but I hope that is clear. And I think ultimately community का भी एक role होगा because they will need to play ball and they will need to trust us कि ये पैसे जो आएंगे ये उन पे लगेंगे, government ने और किस चीज पे लगाएंगे. Thank you very much.
I think just one clarification that I wanted to make, Jagra Saab. Look, where I'm saying is that let's put the same rates, same income tax slabs, or for those people who have already voluntarily declared their income to the FBR. They are not new assessees. This is the low-hanging fruit that you have. I, for example, in my income say, 2 million comes from agriculture. I voluntarily declared it. You didn't ask me to do that. Zafar Saab didn't ask me to do that. I had to make my, self-assessment form, come to terms with one another, and then we said agriculture income 2 million, knowing fully well iske to tax nahi lagega ya bahut kam lagega. That's the low hanging fruit. You don't have to do anything. That's already available with you, and nobody can object to it because they voluntarily declared it.
Two things, Tariq Saab, and just then I hope we take the discussion forward. As I said, conceptually I agree with you. दो चीजें. A, I would love to see, and we will follow up, Zafar Saab and I will follow up, कि FBR से data तो आए conceptually कि हमारे कितने लोगों ने voluntarily agriculture income tax declare किया. So we're not talking conceptually.
आप उनको पंजाब की मिसाल दे सकते हैं और वो देंगे आपको.
We'll do that over the next 2 weeks. The second thing though is the flip side. I just do want to hear that. If I had, this is conceptual, if I had declared agriculture income tax, agricultural income to a certain amount, I think I'm the exception rather than the rule, at least as far as KP is concerned. In KP, I think in Punjab's context, you are potentially talking, at least the cliches के बहुत से लोग जो हैं वो बाकी income जो है वो offset करते हैं, declare it as agriculture income. We believe जो हमने थोड़ा सा वो किया, these are still, I suspect we'll have a small number of people, and they will be people who may have opted to pay a greater rate than going and paying to the Patwari. So I don't want to re-tax people who have already paid. That's something we look at when we look at the data.
If I may come in, unfortunately, Arifa had a programming meeting at the television network, so she has left us. She's handed it over to me. So we have some very interesting questions coming from the people who are attending. We have a question from Mr. Faisal Fareed, which is, if this is the right Faisal Fareed, he's a extremely trained corporate business expert. Now he's taken to farming or farm business related activity. A country having subsistence level agriculture practices, diminishing land holdings, and failing markets, how can you enforce high rates of FBR? So this is a question, and maybe Bajwa Saab, you may want to address this.
Yeah, certainly. Dekhiye, similar arguments can be made by any sector, and that's what Jagda Saab also said. Where do you find a perfect market in which sector? And you can come up with some such arguments on any sector. Wherever you want to tax, people would come up with a long list of arguments why it should not be done. Now, what I'm saying is, again, let me be very clear. I'm not saying that start it and do it across the board. I want to take a very pragmatic approach to it. And my pragmatic approach to it is that these are the people who have already voluntarily declared their agricultural income. Forget about imperfect markets. Forget about diminishing returns. Forget about fragmentation of land holdings. Despite everything, they have voluntarily declared their agricultural income. And what easier plane can there be to implement equity if not here? मैं किसी को नहीं कह रहा, अगर मैं खुद कह रहा हूं कि मेरी 10 लाख रुपए आमदन आई है या 50 लाख आमदन आई है या करोड़ रुपए आमदन आई है, तो फिर मैं उसको पूरा टैक्स क्यों ना दूं? मैंने तो नहीं कह रहा कि आप जरूर कहें कि आपकी 50 लाख आमदन आई है, आप वॉलंटियर कर रहे हैं, एंड दिस इज द लो हैंगिंग फ्रूट, एंड पार्डन माय सेइंग सो। अगर हम ये भी नहीं कर सकते तो फिर एक्चुअल असेसमेंट की बात तो बहुत दूर की है, बहुत दूर की है, and then we will be continue to have this discussion for many more years.
Right. There's another set of questions which actually, और वो बंधारा साहब की बातों में भी वही चीज़ नज़र आई, और मैं भी जब अक्सर फार्मर से बात करता हूँ तो ये बात दोहराई जाती है कि फार्मर्स पे लॉट्स ऑफ टैक्सेस, वो इनपुट्स पे टैक्सेस होते हैं, वो एक टैक्स जो बहुत हैवी होता था एक ज़माने में, हमने भी एक स्टडी की थी ऑन एग्रीकल्चर प्राइसिंग पॉलिसीज इन पाकिस्तान, एंड एट दैट टाइम व्हेन वी हैड हाईली हमारा जो एक्सचेंज रेट था, इट वाज ओवरवैल्यूड. व्हेनेवर यू हैव एन ओवरवैल्यूड एक्सचेंज रेट, यू एंड अप taxing exporters. So farmers were very heavily taxed because of the overvalued exchange rate. That issue is now gone. The procurement prices are also much closer to the market prices, even though the gap remains, as Bandara Sahib has said. But there's a lot of confusion about taxation of inputs, and there's an assumption that people are taxed on their gross incomes as opposed to net incomes. And I think a number of questions that I hear from the audience have referred to that. Perhaps Jhagra Sahib, you may want to talk about that, and of course Baja Sahib also.
I'll just say, as I said, the way that I simply looked at this, which triggered the original set of discussions, was कि अगर हम agricultural net income की बात करें, so then the philosophy in this case is exactly the same. In fact, there are other sectors on individual income जहाँ पे आप net income पे नहीं देते tax. Your salary gets taxed, not net of expenses, but in terms of what you get paid. But I understand कि agriculture income tax जो है वो ultimately आपके net income पे जो है, net agricultural income पे, at which point, as I said, in principle, जो तारिक बाजवा साहब कह रहे हैं वो बिल्कुल ठीक कह रहे हैं कि rupee earned net of what you have paid should be taxed like any other rupee earned. I feel कि उसको एक दो steps जो है वो हैं ज़रूर, and I think let's not forget उसके साथ कि as long as, and it's perhaps a topic for a separate discussion, as long as 97% of our landowners remain people जिनके पास 2-2.5 acres से कम की ज़मीन वो कर रहे, right? Bajwa said Bajwa Saab said there may be some potential from 40 to 50% of the farmers, but it's still true that those 40 to 50% still do agriculture at a very small scale. That is neither a scale जहाँ से जो है हमारी food security transform होगी, right? Nor is that a scale at which the agriculture sector is going to show tremendous growth. So I think the other question along with that is, which goes a little bit contrary to the fact that we have this focus now, but I feel the focus on principle is exactly right, on writing the agricultural tax. But wo hai of incentivizing the sector to be able to produce at scale, right? To have larger players. I don't know that's a corporate, a combination of corporate farming, uske saath jo hai, encouraging people to lease out land and incentives in different areas. But I don't think an agriculture sector where every landowner jo wo agriculture kar raha hai, other than people who are using the agriculture tax regime as an arbitrage opportunity, जो मुझे अपने वालिद साहब से अपने दादा से ज़मीन मिली है that continues to be cut, that may still be above the agriculture tax exemption limit, but it ain't going to either produce anything massive for the province or for the country, right? Somehow I need to incentivize people as well to say, I can take up agriculture as a business, produce, there's demand over here, yes, I will be taxed, I think the profit-making opportunity is equally exciting. And I think that's a challenge we need to resolve as well.
Thank you very much. Two other questions.
जो
Please.
सवाल था जी, मैं 100% इससे एग्री करता हूँ कि ये बिल्कुल एक गलतफहमी है कि एग्रीकल्चर सेक्टर टैक्स नहीं देता। एग्रीकल्चर टैक्स सेक्टर टैक्स देता है, और मैंने जिस तरह वो लाल साहब की रिपोर्ट का भी हवाला दिया कि तकरीबन 20%, 21%, ये पुरानी रिपोर्ट है, बहरहाल उसको बट अच्छी रिपोर्ट थी उस वक्त, कि 21% के करीब टैक्स देता है एग्रीकल्चर सेक्टर। सवाल ये नहीं है कि एग्रीकल्चर सेक्टर टैक्स देता है कि नहीं देता, सवाल तो ये है कि वो इनकम टैक्स कितना देता है। और सवाल तो ये है कि अगर एग्रीकल्चर से आप मैं 1 करोड़ रुपया कमाऊं और मैं अपनी रेंटल इनकम से 1 करोड़ रुपया कमाऊं, या मैं अपनी फैक्ट्री से 1 करोड़ रुपया कमाऊं, तो उसमें फर्क क्यों होना चाहिए? एक तरह पे जब मेरी इनकम है और वो थ्रेशोल्ड से ऊपर है, और इसमें वो सारी आर्गुमेंट, वो छोटे जिम्मेदार और गरीब जिम्मेदार और फ्रेगमेंटेशन की सब निकल जाती है। मैं भी एक छोटा सा जिम्मेदार हूं, लेकिन वो सब चीजें निकल जाएंगी। अगर मेरी आमदन थ्रेशोल्ड से ज्यादा है तो फिर आपको टैक्स, इनकम टैक्स देना चाहिए। सिर्फ ये आर्गुमेंट है। ये बिल्कुल कतई गलत है कि एग्रीकल्चर टैक्स सेक्टर कोई टैक्स नहीं देता, भरपूर टैक्सेशन देता है। और मैं आपको ये भी बताऊं, ये भी एक मिसनोमर है कि पाकिस्तान के अंदर सिर्फ 27 लाख लोग टैक्स देते हैं। नहीं सर, आप ये देखिए कि आपकी टेली डेंसिटी देख लीजिए आप, अगर आपकी 80 मिलियन या 90 मिलियन या 100 मिलियन लोगों के पास सिम है, तो हर एक उसमें से टैक्स देता है। तो पाकिस्तान में टैक्स पेयर की तादाद कम से कम 10 करोड़ है। ये एक अलहदा बात है। तो लिहाजा तमाम जिम्मेदार इनडायरेक्ट टैक्सेस देते हैं। जो सेल फोन वाला है वो तो डायरेक्ट टैक्स भी देता है, उसमें एडवांस इनकम टैक्स दिए लगाया गया है।
अच्छा बाजू साहब, मैं माजरत चाहता हूँ क्योंकि एक और स्ट्रेन है सवालों का, उसको मैं समराइज कर देता हूँ, और वो ये है कि इनडायरेक्ट टैक्सेशन तो हो रही है सेक्टर की, वो तमाम सेक्टर्स की हो रही है, लेकिन चूंकि एग्रीकल्चर में ज़्यादातर इन्हिसार इनडायरेक्ट टैक्सेशन पे है, तो टैक्सेशन ऑफ एग्रीकल्चर इज हाईली रिग्रेसिव। जो उसमें प्रोग्रेसिविटी आनी है वो सिर्फ इनकम टैक्स के थ्रू आ सकती है, और वो चूंकि बड़ा इनएफिशिएंट है, तो वो जो एक कॉन्सेप्ट है कि हमारा एग्रीकल्चर सिस्टम बड़ा अनइक्वल है, वो ज़्यादा परपेचुएट हो जाता है, वो वाली सोच ज़्यादा परपेचुएट हो जाती है। तो ये एक सवाल आ रहा था, आप आपसे एग्री करते हैं या नहीं?
जी मैं एग्री करता हूँ। देखिए, जब तक जो इनडायरेक्ट टैक्सेस हैं वो तो सारे रिग्रेसिव टैक्सेस हैं, और अगर आप पाकिस्तान के अंदर भी देख लें तो अनफॉर्चुनेटली हमारा ट्रेंड जो है वो पिछले सालों के अंदर जो है वो डायरेक्ट टैक्सेशन से हटके इनडायरेक्ट टैक्सेशन पे जाना शुरू हो गया। हम 45-46% इनकम टैक्स पे चले गए थे, अब 36% पे आ गए हैं। तो ये तो वो इनडायरेक्ट टैक्सेशन का मामला तो जो है ये पूरे हर सेक्टर के लिए है, और जिधर जिधर भी होगा उधर गरीब आदमी पे उसका भार जो है वो ज्यादा होगा, उसको ज्यादा उसकी तकलीफ उठानी पड़ेगी। इसी तरह छोटा जिम्मेदार जो है जब इनडायरेक्ट टैक्सेशन देता है तो वो उसका वजन उस पर ज्यादा पड़ता है।
जी, Mr. Tuan Minle, there's a question for you, and the question is, do we have any examples of countries that have improved the structure of their agricultural income tax and have seen remarkable recovery rates in terms of revenues?
For that one, let me go around the question a little bit. You know, it is when we talk about like the agriculture income tax, as I said, most of the countries follow the similar system that they're really taxing based on land area, just because a lot of you know, a lot of reasons, and it is unlike the developed countries when they talk of they focus on the actual income declaration and enforce like the tax law the same way as the non-income non-agriculture income. And countries also try to move away from the land-based tax, and not many, but they try to have some sort of try to find a way to have the measurement of the proxy of the income in agriculture with different success. And I mentioned about like the case of Mauritius and the case of maybe some other selected countries in Latin America. But to be honest, if we talk about like the revenue metric, the outcome is not really promising. I mentioned earlier that the income tax, the tax based on income, the tax on direct income contributed like less than 20% of of the total, and mostly farmers. They have to pay a lot of the taxes on indirect on the inputs, and so that's the question is how we can raise the income tax for the agriculture. And the panelists already talked a little bit more about like the moving into like the harmonizing the income, agriculture income with other tax regimes. Yes, I think that that's important, but I would like to also mention again, my point is that we need to also care about like the poor, and let's chase like a 1% of the large farms and the holdings. That would be the case. And and also we look at other countries that have like that try to harmonize the agriculture income taxation in the mainstream of the main corporate income tax or GST, value-added tax, and so on. They have also a lot of exemptions. And if we think about like the farmers that have the income from agriculture that is lower than the exempt level of the income, the personal income tax, for example, then the question is always that naturally they need also to get exemptions as well.
Okay, thank you. I have time just for one last. Haned, did you wish to say something?
Yes. I just want to say that recently India did something very interesting. As you know, that agriculture income is exempt from income tax even in India, although it's a central subject, not a state subject. What they have done is that they have legislated that if you are earning any income from non-agricultural sources, then you have to declare the total income. And that has to be taxed as non-agricultural income. So exemption goes if you earn anything other than from any other source than agriculture.
Right.
So
right.
this may be worth trying.
Now, Haned, this is very good because this leads me to the last question we can ask this evening. And I'm extrapolating a little bit from the actual question. The actual question says that, look, if all you're going to collect is 70 billion rupees, is it worth the effort? Because you will need to spend a lot of resources in trying to mobilize this. Is it worth the effort? Now, as I pointed out, I learned today that Punjab is going to spend 68 billion on the new health insurance system. So if this effort can pay for the health insurance system every year, that'd be fantastic. It's not a small amount. But leaving that aside, building on Haned's response, I really think that the potential by improving the tax systems is not so much to be looked at only in terms of the revenue that you can get from agriculture, but it's the overall coherence of the tax system and the revenue that is being lost because we have a highly dissipated, fragmented tax structure, so that people can declare incomes that comes from non-agricultural sources to their holdings and therefore evade taxation. So the potential base is actually considerably larger than just the 70 billion that we estimate by looking at the crop sector, or the number is larger as Bajwa Saab is saying, but the actual potential for the country's tax base is considerably larger. Bajwa Saab, would you agree with that?
I would, but I would with some cautions, with a caveat. The way I have worked out is I've worked it from the other end, from the contribution of the crop sector to the total GDP. And if you work at that end, then your total, then the taxable income potential would be around 1,200 1,300 billion rupees. And if you tax it at 10% or 50%, we're talking about anywhere between 120 to 180 billion rupees. A substantial amount. But as I said, is it a panacea for all of fiscal issues? It's not. But it's a substantial amount. And more important, it's a question of equity. And it's a question of creating an environment in which compliance by all sectors is the norm, and not an excuse by one sector by pointing out to agriculture because they are not paying, so why are you asking us to pay? So I think we have to create that positive environment in which everyone who has a taxable income from any source is paying a tax.
I think Baja Saab, Hanid, yes, go ahead.
I think we are still sort of stuck up with the revenue part of the taxation, and the issue goes much beyond that. Evasion, yes. If you have differential taxation for different sectors, there would be evasion. That's guaranteed. But nobody's talking about resource allocation. आपका क्या ख्याल है कि हमारे यहाँ इतना जो है हर जो उठता है वो एक दुकान क्यों खोल लेता है, कोई प्रोडक्टिव चीज क्यों नहीं करता, छोटी इंडस्ट्री या छोटा वर्कशॉप क्यों नहीं खोल लेता, दुकान क्यों खोलता है? बिकॉज इट्स वेरी लाइटली टैक्स्ड. सो रिसोर्स एलोकेशन जो है उसकी तो हम बात ही नहीं कर रहे. The impact on resource allocation is much larger than the revenue impact. So keep that in mind as well.
Right. A very good point. If you have $1 million to invest, you would make a whole lot of money by setting up a store in a shopping mall than opening a factory in Nowshera. That's for sure. And it's all the regulatory systems that you have to deal with, and all the tax regimes that you have to deal with. Zafar Shah Saab ka haath.
I have to leave. I don't want to, but sorry, I have another commitment I have to make. I have to go on a teleconference. An excellent initiative, Dr. Saab, and a brilliant discussion. I learned a lot. Thank you very much. Jagra Saab, you're always available. Invite us over Patateka and the Chersi Kebab. We'll be there with you to have in-depth discussions. Thank you very much. Thank you, Anand Saab. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Sam.
Thank you. I think with that we can conclude. Zafar Saab, yes, please, Zafar Shah Saab, please.
Just a point, I think, and that's one is this livestock. I think this was discussed, but somehow we couldn't conclude it in that way. That would really increase the tax base for this whole exercise. And I think this is livestock in Punjab and Sindh, and even in KPK now. A lot of people are going for value addition over there. So livestock will entirely almost triple the tax base, one. Secondly, water tax. I don't want to again indulge in another debate, but water is now a scarce commodity. And if you see for the last 20 years, it's earning the same amount that was earning 20 years back. But now we have Water Act, water policies. So that is again a very important issue in this whole agriculture debate. So livestock inclusion in the taxation, and then it will of course not be land-based. So these are kind of questions we still have to ponder on. Thank you.
Anand, you have 30 seconds only.
Please, I just have to make a clarification on this one.
Gee.
I think provinces missed the bus. Under the Constitution of Pakistan, agricultural income is to be taxed by the provinces by default, because in 1973 Constitution we took out agriculture income from the federal legislative system. But it's the federal government which defines what is meant by agricultural income. It's not the provinces to define what is agricultural income. That's by Constitution, Article 41. So and they have defined that. Under the ITO, they have defined what is meant by agriculture. Under the number of notification of FBR and circulars by FBR, whereby livestock, fishery, forestry are all federal subjects. They are not provincial subjects.
Okay, so I think with that, let me bring today's discussion to a close. It's been a fascinating discussion. We will summarize the main points that came out of this discussion and share it with the participants and with the panelists.
Can I say one sentence, Dr. Jasnabi?
Absolutely.
Thank you very much. Actually, I've given very less time, although I was the most important stakeholder as a farmer.
I completely agree with
about
you.
The agriculture tax. I just want to quickly suggest 2-3 things. If you're talking about tax collection, I'd like to suggest Jhagra Saab sitting here. You can talk to the Prime Minister to take a youth on board. Just look at your youth council. There is no farmer, young farmer, no rural area guy there to tell what actually those people are thinking about. If you're talking about tax collection from the agriculture sector and particularly farmers' income, you need to invest in your youth because they are no more interested in the agriculture sector due to whatever reasons. Thirdly, the most important point is you made earlier that we need to invest the collected tax in that particular area. If you are collecting the tax from Pakpatan, you should actually invest that tax to the investment as an investment in the infrastructure that is not available for the agriculture sector. And most importantly, you need to improve the value chain. You need to understand the roles of different players. The most important player is the middleman, who sometimes is capturing all the value chain by the capital he have. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Amasad. You have raised extremely good points. We are also seeing in some of the research that's being done in the property tax area that when you combine improvement in service delivery with property taxes, the willingness to pay the tax increases substantially. So I think the same thing goes here, and Bhandara Saab has very eloquently pointed out the importance of that. And I really think, I mean, whenever I talk to farmers, they say, listen, the urban consumer cries because prices are going up. We cry that we are not getting adequate prices. Somebody is making a lot of money in this. And that's neither the farmers and clearly not the urban consumers. We need to investigate the entire food chain. I'm very glad to report that CDPR, IGC, the International Growth Center, has just launched a study to understand the entire value chain of 2 or 3 critical agricultural commodities to pinpoint exactly where the profits are being pocketed, as Mr. Bhandara has pointed out. So with that, let me bring today's session to a close. It's been a fascinating discussion. I think the main point, I'm not going to get into a too long sort of a conclusion or a summary of things. Lots of very good things were raised, lots of very good issues were brought to the fore. But the basic principle that comes out is that equity requires that all incomes should be treated equally. It doesn't matter whether the income comes from being a farmer, an industrialist, a shopkeeper, a teacher. It doesn't matter what profession you adopt. Your net income should be subjected to the same tax regardless. I think that's a very important message. And if we take that to heart, I think it'll go a long way in improving our tax systems. With that, I'm very grateful to this eminent panelist and of course to the World Bank for co-hosting this series of seminars. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.